Welcome to iQuanta's YouTube channel. My name is Vikrant, your personal coach for all things related to English, communication skills, and psychological aspects of preparation. And this session is a special and rare session. Rare because in this session we are going to talk about questionable questions in the CAT exam conducted in 2024. I'm looking at VARC slot 2, as you can see right here. Okay, so so first up, the CAT is an amazing exam. It is one of those exams where I go through the questions and I really truly admire the intellect of the person or the people who've gone on to create it. With that said, yes, there are times when the questions can go awry, can go wrong, or can become, as I said, questionable. And unfortunately, in slot 2, there are a couple of such questions. And the good thing is, the IIMs know that such possibilities, such scenarios can exist. And that is why they give you an opportunity to go ahead and raise the objections. And if those objections are valid, if those objections are reasonable, they'd be more than happy to go ahead and fix it for you. So let's go ahead and talk about the two questionable questions that I found in the second slot of the CAT 24 exam. So I'll take you through the passage and then I'll take you through the question and then we'll talk about why and what went wrong. So let's go ahead. So instead of asking you to solve it, let's just read it together. So see, there are three other common drivers for carnivore human attacks. So there are animals who are carnivores, like for example, a lion, a cheetah, right? There are times when they attack human beings. So there is some reason behind their attacking the human beings that must have preceded the passage, because the first sentence says there are three other common drivers. So some of which are more preventable than others. Natural aggression based conflicts, such as those involving females protecting their young or animals protecting a food source, can often be avoided as long as people stay away. Fantastic. So one reason is natural aggression. You go close to their kids or their food, they attack, avoid it. Carnivores that recognize humans as a means to get food are a different story. As they become more reliant on human food, they might find at campsite or in rubbish bins, they become less avoidant of humans. Losing that instinctive fear response puts them into more situations where they could get into an altercation with a human, which often results in that bear being put down by humans. So a fed bear is a dead bear, says Savine, referring to a common saying among biologists and conservationists. So far, I think if you purely look at it in terms of a passage, fairly easy to read, right? Nothing very challenging really. Then predatory or predation related attacks are quite rare, only accounting for 17% of attacks in North America since 1955. Okay. I mean, 17% quite rare. Low, yes, quite rare, no. They occur when a carnivore views a human as prey and hunts it like it would any other animal it uses for food. Then there are animal attacks provoked by people taking pictures with them or feeding them in natural settings, such as national parks, which often end with animals being euthanized out of precaution. So you kill those animals. Eventually, that animal becomes habituated to people, and then bad things happen to the animal, and the folks who initially wanted to make that connection do not necessarily realize that, says Christine Wilkinson, a postdoctoral researcher at UC Berkeley, California, who's been studying coyote human conflicts. Okay, coyote is a wolf kind of an animal, okay, or a, yeah, that kind of an animal. So after conducting countless postmortems on all types of carnivore human attacks spanning 75 years, Panteriani's team believes 50% could have been avoided if humans reacted differently. A 2017 study co-authored by Panteriani found that engaging in risky behavior around large carnivores increases the likelihood of an attack. Two of the most common risky behaviors are parents leaving their children to play outside unattended and walking an unleashed dog, according to the study. Wilkinson says 66% of coyote attacks involve a dog. People end up in a situation where their dog is being chased, or their dog chases a coyote, or maybe they're walking their dog near a den that is marked, and the coyote wants to escort them away. So when you're too close to their territory, so they attack. Experts believe climate change also plays a part in the escalation of human carnivore conflict, but the correlation still needs to be ironed out. As finite resources become scarcer, carnivores and people are coming into more frequent contact, which means that more conflict could occur, says Jen Miller. International program specialist for the US Fish and Wildlife Service, for example, she says there was an uptick in lion attacks in Western India during a drought when lions and people were relying on the same water sources, so that climate change can have an influence. And the last paragraph says the likelihood of human carnivore conflicts appear to be higher in areas of low income countries dominated by vast rural landscapes and farmland, according to Penteriani's research. There are a lot of working landscapes in the global south that are really heterogeneous, that are interspersed with carnivore habitats. So in between you have these regions that are regions for carnivores, uh, carnivore habitats, forest, savanna, so regions which create a lot more opportunity for these encounters, just statistically, says Wilkinson. So there was a question. Now I did not type it, I wanted to show it the way it appeared in the response sheet, and here it is right above me. So you see that? So what is this question essentially about? So the question says, which of the following statements, if false, would be inconsistent with the concerns raised in the passage regarding the drivers? Now, first up, you know that we simplify this question. So false is basically not true, right? So change this false into true and remove a not from elsewhere. We can remove it from here. Inconsistent is not consistent. So now the question is, which of the following, if true, would be consistent with the concerns raised in the passage regarding the drivers of carnivore human conflicts? So basically, which option can be termed true on the basis of the passage? So let's look at A. Human efforts to avoid risky behaviors around large carnivores have proven effective in reducing conflict incidents. So is this consistent? No, it is not. What we are saying is that we need to, that there are 50% cases where if you changed your behavior, the outcome could have been different. So humans need to make that effort, yes, but are they making that effort? No. Second, predatory attacks by carnivores are a common occurrence and have steadily increased over the past few decades. Are they a very common occurrence? They happen, yes, but have they increased steadily over the past few decades? We don't know that, right? So let's just see. Even if I take you back to the first paragraph, we are talking about common drivers, and then there are these drivers that are mentioned, and then they're talking about they treating us as prey is pretty rare, and then there are these situations. So there is nothing here that tells us that they have steadily increased. So is it consistent with the passage? No. Now third is in green because this was marked as an answer by the IM consortium. I will read it out for you. It says climate change has had negligible effects on the frequency of carnivore human interactions in affected regions. So third says climate change had negligible effects. But if I take you to the relevant paragraph, see, this paragraph basically goes on to tell us that climate can have an impact. So if you purely look at the data given here and the tone that is presented in the passage, and then you look at option C, you'd realize that they contrast. This, in fact, is definitely inconsistent. This is definitely inconsistent with the passage. This is false as per the passage. And then fourth, carnivores lose their instinctive fear of humans when consistently exposed to human food sources. No, that's a slight distortion, right? That happens when they start accepting humans as a potential source of their food. So even this is not fully consistent. And that is why I believe this is one of those questions where third can definitely not be an answer. In fact, none of these is going to be an answer. We can just quickly check human food source part once again even more closely. So carnivores that recognize humans as a means to get food. Right? So this is the part that is there in the passage, and if you now go off to carnivores lose their when consistently exposed to human food sources, no, it's not exactly the same thing. So this is one question where unfortunately none of these options is exactly or 100% right. And with that, now let me take you over to another passage where we found something that was concerning. So here is that passage which talked about spices. So spices were a global commodity centuries before European voyagers. There was a complex chain of relations, yet consumers had little knowledge of producers and vice versa. Desire for spices helped fuel European colonial empires to create political, military, and commercial networks under a single power. Okay, so I mean, there are times when something as humble as spices can have this kind of an impact. Then historians know a fair amount about the supply of spices in Europe during the medieval period, the origins, methods of transportation, the prices, but less about demand. Why go to such extraordinary efforts to procure expensive products from exotic lands? Why was there a demand for these? No, it's still, demand was great enough to inspire the voyages of Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama, launching the first fateful wave of European colonialism. So here is your passage that goes ahead and talks about spices and some of the pertinent points around this. The next, so why were spices so highly priced in Europe in the centuries from about 1000 to 1500? One widely disseminated explanation for medieval demand for spices was that they covered the taste of spoiled meat. So medieval purchasers consumed meat much fresher than what the average city dweller in the developed world of today has at hand. However, refrigeration was not available, and some hot spices have been shown to serve as an antibacterial agent. So salting, smoking, drying means of preservation. Most spices used in cooking began as medical ingredients. So you notice, so one reason very clearly was they helped them preserve the meat or cover the fact that the meat is spoiled. Then the other is they initiated with the medical ingredients, and throughout the Middle Ages is medieval period, spices were used as both medicines and condiments. So they were not just spices that were spicing up your food, they were also medicines. Above all, medieval recipes involving the combination of medical and culinary lore in order to balance food's humoral properties and prevent disease. So it was said that if you use spices along with your in your recipes, so there are these stories that you are able to balance certain kind of things and avoid diseases, etc. Now most spices were hot and dry, and so appropriate in sauces to counteract the moist and wet properties supposedly possessed by most meat and fish. I think this again goes towards preserving or covering up the spoiled bit. So where spices came from was known in a vague sense centuries before the voyages of Columbus. Just how vague may be judged by looking at medieval world maps. To the medieval European imagination, the East was exotic, alluring. Medieval maps often placed India close to the so-called earthly paradise, the Garden of Eden described in the Bible. We had some exalted notion in the world maps back then of our country. Geographical knowledge has a lot to do with the perception of spices' relative scarcity and the reasons for their high prices. An example of the varying notion of scarcity is the conflicting information about how pepper is harvested. As far back as the 7th century, Europeans thought that pepper in India grew on trees guarded by serpents that would bite and poison anyone who attempted to gather the fruit. The only way to harvest pepper was to burn the trees, which would drive the snakes underground. Of course, this bit of lore, story, folklore, remember, would explain the shriveled black peppercorns, but not white, pink, or other colors. Spices never had the enduring allure or power of gold and silver or the commercial potential of new products such as tobacco, indigo, or sugar, but the taste for spices did continue for a while beyond the Middle Ages. As late as the 17th century, the English and the Dutch were struggling for control of the Spice Islands. Dutch New Amsterdam or New York was exchanged by the British for one of the Moluccan islands where nutmeg was grown. Nutmeg is one of those spices. So that's your passage. And here is the question in concern. This is the question that we are unhappy with. So you say it can be inferred that all of the following contributed to a decline in the allure of spices except. Now problem number one is that according to the passage, we do not definitely know that there is a decline. See, if I take you through the last paragraph, it says spices never had the enduring allure or power of gold and silver or the commercial potential of these things. But then immediately, so this says that okay, the taste for spices, the demand for spices may not have been everlasting. But then the very next sentence starts with but. It says but the taste for spices did continue for a while beyond the Middle Ages. As late as the 17th century, there were people who were doing it. So are we saying that there has definitely been a decline? So we cannot really be 100% certain of the fact that there is a decline. Now, now the next part where I think some people did not read the passage as closely and thus took it towards a different direction altogether. But then if I were to treat it hypothetically, then tell me something. What can potentially contribute to a decline in the allure of spices? Is there anything that we can use in the passage to figure that out? Is there something that can reduce their allure, that can lead to that decline? So if you read it closely, you would definitely find it. Why? The passage does offer reasons why the spices were being used. Where are those reasons? Well, here they are. So check this. So their meat could become spoiled. The spices could cover it. So they were in demand. There was no refrigeration, which is again something that is related to it. So they needed spice to preserve. Yet another reason is that they were thought to have medicinal properties back in the day. So these are the kind of things that have been mentioned as reasons behind people using the spices, right? So if these reasons go away, then we can say that the demand of the spices may also go away. And I'll emphasize, may also go away. We cannot be definite about it. We cannot be 100% certain about it. But let's see. Check. First says changes in European cuisine. Now, if I take you back to that paragraph, you notice it talks about their recipes. It had a combination of medical and culinary lore. Now, if the recipes change, then there is a possibility that spices may not get, that spices are not used. Possibility, not a certainty. So if A is true, it can lead to a decline. Okay, let's look at second, the development of refrigeration techniques. So one use of the spices was preservation. If there is refrigeration, then it can lead to the decline. Third says increase in availability of spices. Increase in the availability of spices, why will it reduce the allure of spices? What is it likely to do? Let me take you to another part of the passage. Okay, and this is the part. Geographical knowledge has a lot to do with the perception of spices, relative scarcity, and the reasons for their high prices. So if you increase the availability, you will reduce the prices. Right? So if I look at third, if this is true, it will do nothing, or it's highly unlikely to reduce the allure of spices. It is likely to reduce the prices. So first and second will reduce the allure. So let's just keep, or not will, but they may reduce the allure. Third will reduce the prices. Changes in system of medical treatment. Well, medicinal properties. What if you later realize that we have a new system which is more effective, and if in that system spices do not play a role, then once again, because medicinal properties was one of the reasons, that may reduce the allure of the spices. So You realize, if I look at 1, 2, and 4, for these three, I will say that they may lead to a decline in the allure. Okay, so that's for 1, 2, and 4. 3 will lead to a decline in prices. It is unlikely, once again, we can't be very sure. There are times when some things are attractive only because they are expensive. You know, there are certain handbags which are carried as status symbol because they're expensive. Tomorrow, if their prices crash, maybe their sales goes down. Who knows? Maybe their allure becomes less. You know? Do you think a Mercedes will always will ever put its 3-pointed star on a 5 lakh rupee car? Highly unlikely, right? It will reduce the allure of the brand. So it can lead to, but it's unlikely. When it comes to spices, I mean, luxury goods are a different thing. But for spices, it can, it may not. We can't be very sure, but it appears unlikely. So 1, 2, and 4 are likely to lead to a decline. Third is unlikely to lead to a decline. Now let's look at the question. It can be inferred that all of the following contributed to decline except, so you think one of these did not contribute to the decline. So now to wrap it up, number one, we cannot be 100% certain that a decline happened. And even if it did, we cannot be 100% sure that 1, 2, and 4 were factors that definitely led to a decline. So if this question were to be rephrased, if you say which of the following could be the least likely reason for a decline in the allure of spices, then yes, then we can choose third. But the way it is phrased at the moment, rather definitively, then it's basically troublesome. And that is why I think if you look at it purely logically, you cannot really arrive at 3 as your answer. 3 is the least likely to impact the allure, although even that can. 1, 2, and 4 are comparatively more likely. So if the question deals in possibilities, then we can look at it. If it does not, then no. So if you are somebody who did appear for the CAT slot 2, well, these are the 2 questions that you can definitely raise an objection to, and hopefully something fair will come out of it. So I will leave you here with this particular thought. So if you're somebody who has tuned in because you are thinking about preparing for the CAT 25, well, then this is your sign. The time is now. At iQuanta, we have already launched our CAT 25 batches. There are 700 students who are already preparing to go ahead of the competition. So don't miss out on that. Please make sure that you start your preparation ASAP. Right? Chali, so I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay focused, and stay in touch. I'll see you soon.